The SNP will always stand up for Scotland's best interests. We will make Scotland's voice heard. But I know that it's not just people in Scotland who feel let down by Westminster politics. That's why my message to people watching in England, Wales and Northern Ireland is one of friendship. I won't pretend I don't want Scotland to be independent. I do. But as long as Scotland remains part of the Westminster system, the SNP will seek to work with others of like mind across the UK to deliver positive change. Like many of you, we want an alternative to the pain of austerity.
But the alternative to that plan is actually putting up taxes. And I don't want to do that. I think that if we go back to the tax, the waste, the spending and the debt, all the things that got us into a mess in the first place, we wouldn't help working people, we'd hurt working people. That's what Labour did last time, and we mustn't let it happen again.
I think not for the first time tonight David Cameron's going to want to talk about the past, but he doesn't want to talk about the future. But David, you just said that you were tackling tax avoidance. Let's look at the reality on this. You haven't acted on the tax havens. You haven't acted on the hedge funds. Now, you have to ask yourself at home, why won't David Cameron act on those hedge funds? They fund his party. He won't act. You need leadership that will stand up and act to tackle tax avoidance.
It's a balance, and it does mean, yes, you need to reduce spending, but you also need to make those with the broadest shoulders, the wealthiest, to pay a bit more through the tax system to balance the books. That's the way you can balance the books, do it fairly, also then, of course, put money into public services. So the Liberal Democrat plan is a very simple one. We'll cut less than the Conservatives, and we'll borrow less than Labour.
Since World War II, we've operated with net migration into Britain at an average of about 30,000 a year. It is now net 300,000 people a year. It is 10 times anything this country has had to live with since 1945. And what it's meant is for ordinary folk on minimum wage or not very high salaries, their wages have been compressed.
And the problem with Nigel in the end is ultimately, Nigel, you're just the back door to a Labour government, which will give us open-door immigration, which is not what this country wants.
Ed Miliband.
David, I'm wondering what world you live in.
There are 7,000 diagnoses in this country every year for people who are HIV positive, which is not a good place for any of them to be, I know. But 60% of them are not British nationals. You can come into Britain from anywhere in the world and get diagnosed with HIV and get the retroviral drugs that cost up to £25,000 per year per patient. I know there are some horrible things happening in many parts of the world, but what we need to do is to put the National Health Service there for British people and families who in many cases have paid into this system for decades.
Thank you. Leanne Wood.
This kind of scaremongering rhetoric is dangerous.
It's a fact.
It's dangerous, it divides communities and it creates stigma to people who are ill, and I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm sorry, we've got to put our own people first. I mean, would you, Leanne?
The Green Party is determined to deliver a fair economy that does not make the poor and disadvantaged pay for the errors and fraud of the bankers. We're committed to returning the NHS to its founding principles. No public money going into private profits.